Market supply represents the marginal cost of production. Whatever market this may be, cars, t-shirts, music streaming services, carrots, as the price of that thing increases, it will encourage producers to increase the quantity that they supply because the higher reward justifies incurring greater and greater expenses when producing the product. This is what we call the law of supply. When the price of a good increases, the quantity supplied increases, which means that the supply curve is upward sloping. The supply curve tells us how firms react when the price of what they're selling changes. When the price is low, firms produce low quantities of that product. Think about renting a movie on a physical disc. The price is very low, only a couple of dollars at Redbox or something similar. And what they supply is also limited, especially compared to the old days of Blockbuster charging $5 per rental and offering a massive selection. As the price rises, more firms start production, and each firm produces more of the good. Think about a farmer growing a crop like wheat. When the price for their product rises, it justifies taking costlier actions like using better but more expensive weed and pest killers in order to increase the yield when you harvest. Firms have the ability to boost production, usually at a higher marginal cost, and they will only do so if the price rises above that marginal cost. And when the price is high, firms pull out all the stops and produce more even at extravagant costs. Consider oil production, where high prices for oil have justified building oil rigs on the ocean. The Al Shaheen oil field in the Persian Gulf has a well that is dug over 7.5 miles into the earth, one of the deepest holes humans have ever dug. Those kinds of expenses are only feasible when the price of a product is high. There are some important things to keep in mind when thinking about supply. Supply is the result of firms maximizing their profits. It comes after innovation and cost minimization. The supply curve tells us the minimum marginal cost of production. It's like asking suppliers to line up based on how cheaply they can make each unit of a product. Each supplier is represented in this line many times, but supply goes in order of those who can produce each unit the cheapest. Supply also reminds us that using resources comes with an opportunity cost. The marginal cost of production includes both explicit and implicit costs. And so supply reflects the value of what society has to give up in order to produce something. Market demand represents what consumers are willing to pay for a good or service. Whatever market this may be, bicycles, apples, accounting services, theme parks, as the price of that thing falls, more consumers will be getting in line to buy one, and some may be interested in more than one. This is what we call the law of demand. When the price of a good decreases, the quantity demanded increases, which means that the demand curve is downward sloping. When the price of something is very high, only those who value the good highly will be willing to pay for it. Kobe beef is considered some of the best beef in the world, but it will cost you about $200 for a single cut of steak. At that price, only fine beef connoisseurs are willing to pay for that privilege. As the price falls, people purchase higher quantities, and more consumers opt in. Smartphones are pretty expensive, but the price has come down quite a bit compared to the early days of satellite phones. And it is estimated that about 85% of the entire global population has one. When the price is low, most who value the good at all purchase it, and many buy in large quantities. If you're anything like me, you hardly ever make it through a gallon of milk before it spoils. But milk is so cheap that if I think there's even a chance I'll need it, I'll usually buy it. And it's pretty ubiquitous in fridges all over the country. Let's make sure we really have demand down. Demand is the result of consumers maximizing their utility. Demand comes after consumers have considered their constraints, such as their income or their budget. It shows us how much people value this particular product, which we measure by what they're willing to give up for it. Demand reminds us that people are willing to make sacrifices. We are willing to give up consumption of one thing in order to have another. In this way, demand represents the value of what a consumer is foregoing, and therefore tells us what the marginal benefit of consumption is to them. That is supply and demand. Each individual firm has a supply curve, and each individual consumer has a demand curve. But when we put everything together, all competing for scarce resources and products, we get market supply and market demand. These are the two forces in a market. Supply represents producers who have to acquire resources in order to make the things people want. Supply is the force with which attracts resources to a particular purpose. Demand represents consumers who have desires for products. Demand is the force which distributes the goods and services which are produced. One way or another, these products end up in the hands of the people willing to pay the most for them. Now all that's left is to put them together.